Coming to you from deep within the swamps of the southeastern United States, this is a paranormal podcast unlike one you've ever experienced before. This is the Westgate Paranormal Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Westgate Paranormal Podcast. Today is Tuesday, September the 4th, 2018, and I am one of your hosts, Eric Desad.
And I'm Amanda.
And tonight we are going to be doing a slightly different sort of topic. It is along the lines of the paranormal, but not something that some people would generally consider, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
It's more of a an honor, I guess you can say, to a particular historic person who, how would you say this? Who's well known throughout a lot of different groups, a lot of different communities, things like that. And I believe, we both believe, that she very much definitely ties into the theme of paranormal, but more within a socio-cultural or religious aspect, I guess you can say.
I think a lot of it, that's got a lot to do with it, but I think that there's a lot of myth and a lot of legend behind her that has also created a lot of interest in, I guess, paranormal type groups too, as well.
Right, exactly. Just the whole idea of this wonderful woman's life and her past and her history and the legends and sometimes the complete misinformation and sometimes the outright twisting of her actual life by certain people throughout history.
Right.
So tonight we're going to be talking about the well-known Queen of Voodoo, I guess you can say, of New Orleans style voodoo, especially Marie Laveau. So first, before we even get started with this, because this can be a touchy subject with some people, obviously, because first off, it relates to voodoo, more specifically a New Orleans style of voodoo, and within the framework or the religious aspect of voodoo itself, it is a religion into and of itself that dates back a very long time, first stemming from Africa. And it is also a religion that, in order to properly be practiced and completely be understood by the practitioners, by the followers, whatever terminology you want to use, it's not necessarily something that somebody can just walk into a bookstore and pick up a book on voodoo and say, I do voodoo,
Right.
no matter what branch it may be. And there are lots of different branches that are associated with this, and a lot of different little sort of, I guess you could say, sub practices.
It also depends on where you come from too.
Right. It's very cultural in a lot of different ways. Obviously, we are not African in any way. And we mean absolutely zero disrespect in anything that we may say. This is just our way of sort of looking into this, the life of Marie Laveau that can be very mysterious, and we're doing it with complete honor, complete respect to a very beautiful system of religious practice known as voodoo. A lot of people have their own preconceived notions of what voodoo is, and we are certainly not here to perpetuate any sort of negative aspects of that, because that, first off, is not what it involves, really. Voodoo itself is, in and of its own right, its own religion that the different branches, different aspects of it has, by necessity, I guess you can say, in history, when it came to the Americas, had to be hidden
Right.
in the symbolism of the Catholic Church, especially, in order just to even be practiced. So it started here in our country under a very sort of oppressive state within society alone. So that in itself obviously is going to make it a little bit misunderstood. Historically, a lot of people have just made up blatant lies about it and that sort of thing, just to make it look, very dark and evil and things like that, which it's not. It's really not. It's not. In fact, in my opinion, without getting on a religious tirade, it is less evil or less dark than most commonly accepted organized religions, the histories that have created the religions as we know it, because it is very traditional. It is a practice from the earth itself and from the specific tribes of the different branches that kind of flowed together and ebbed back and forth as some of these people were brought over here as slaves in the past, and just in order to be able to even hold on to their culture, they had to sort of cloak it or hide it in order to be able to even keep those aspects of their culture. And it's thriving throughout the world in different parts of the world, different ways today, especially here in the Southeast United States. There's many different flavors of it, or versions, however you want to call it. And that all comes from those sort of backgrounds within history, within those cultures, and how they had to bring it over just to be able to continue to live and to practice their own religions. So without further ado, we go into this, like I said, with the utmost respect. This is just our way of kind of looking into our understanding of Marie Laveau and paying honor to this wonderful humanitarian, this healer, this person who had gone through lots of what we would now consider very insurmountable odds just to be able to do what she did.
Absolutely.
And gained the respect that she did in her lifetime, and how it's kind of been twisted throughout the centuries, I guess you can say. And hopefully we'll kind of unwind that a little bit and show you what a wonderful, beautiful person she was, and how she touched so many souls, anybody she came in contact with, in a very positive way. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you, Amanda, and let you sort of touch on some things that you feel you'd like to talk about with it.
Okay, and this could be a multi-part episode, honestly, depending on how long this runs. Just because there's so much to her. They always have the saying of, there's 3 parts to every story, and honestly, I feel like with Marie Laveau, you could kind of do 10.
Yeah.
Just because it depended upon who you talk to, what book you pick up. What I want everyone to understand is, under no circumstance are we going to bring in the theatrics of American Horror Story or any of that. Anything sensationalized, anything that you see on TV covering anything like that, I don't have time for.
It's pure Hollywood. It really is. And it plays into those negative stereotypes that have been perpetuated,
that's exactly
unfortunately.
It. And I'm kind of here to, promote the positive parts of her, at least in this part of this episode. Even in other parts, there'll never be anything negative, but we may go into the myth, the legend, the lore of her in other episodes. But this one, I want to be purely about who she actually was. And
Right.
The big thing I want to start with is, when a lot of people talk about Marie Laveau, for some reason they always think that Marie Laveau and Madame Lalaurie are the same people. And under no circumstance are they even remotely close to being
Not
the same person.
Even close.
They are polar opposites. I won't even start with Lalaurie. There's no reason to. She does not deserve to be in the same podcast as Marie Laveau.
Right.
So, with that being said, some of the information I did gain was from an ancestor of Marie Laveau. So, I want to put that out there, that it wasn't just pulled out of my ass. or just off of Wikipedia or anything like that. We actually were in contact with a great-great-granddaughter of Marie Laveau. To get some of this information, I actually did get a hold of her obituary through this woman. She's an amazing person for even giving me any of this. So to start, Marie Laveau, depending on who you talk to, she was born anytime between 1794 and 1801. The reason for that being is documents back then weren't always kept. A lot of people kept their birth dates of their children and their grandchildren in family Bibles. Things like that. They didn't have the same systems that we did back then. She was born in New Orleans, obviously.
Right, and especially given the state of society at that time.
Absolutely.
Also, and how and who her parents were, that has a lot to play into it, right?
Right. She was born on St. Anne Street in the home that she died in. She lived there her whole life. Her mother was born in that house. Her mother died in that house, as well as she did. St. Anne's, her home was between Rampart Street and Burgundy. That house is no longer there. It was built by French settlers, and at the time that it was built, it was supposedly the most beautiful home in that entire neighborhood. She did come from money. Her father was Charles Laveau. He was a prominent New Orleans figure. He was a white man, and he served in the New Orleans state legislature. And her mom was, and the thing is, again, with all the things surrounding her, there's two different Marguerites that come up that could be her mom. But the one that I saw that was most prominent is Marguerite Henry. So I'm going to go with that. Marguerite Henry was an African American. She, when I say married Charles Laveau, at the time back then, it was illegal for interracial marriages.
Right.
That's the
so
word
it's
I'm
not
looking
it's
for.
not in the sense that we think of like a legal marriage
Right.
nowadays, because it's a whole different culture back then.
And that could also have a lot to do with the fact that we don't have a whole lot of correct birth records on her, is because it was an illegal marriage, basically. They didn't keep records back then. So
It makes perfect sense. And it's just the idea of like even here locally in Florida, or really anywhere, that there was slavery that existed here within the United States. Obviously, it came more with the British and with some of the French influences and stuff too, not so much with the Spanish like we had here in Florida.
right.
It was later with the British, but even for the most part, when those slaves died, they were put in a pauper cemetery, Potter's Field. They were kind of non-citizens at that point, in a very real sense.
Right.
So the records, tombstones, burial records, and a lot of that have just been completely lost over the years, because they were considered pieces of property.
Right.
So
Right. Now, Marie Laveau and her mother were both freed slaves. So that stigma was off of them to a certain extent. I mean,
right.
Unfortunately, at the time, if you were black, whether you were freed or not, you still were looked at in the same manner.
You still were not a citizen like
Right.
what we consider them nowadays.
Right. There's a whole lot about this whole backstory that makes me want to go back in the past and throat punch people. I will say that right now.
Yeah, the civil rights movement is a very recent innovation within our country. Like, within most of, just prior to our lifetimes, really. Like, the real civil rights movement didn't really even start until the 1960s with
Right.
LBJ and Martin Luther King in St. Augustine, of all places.
Right. So after that, there's not a whole lot of childhood information on her. The first big thing that happened, and I do believe that this is probably what started the whole voodoo thing, is her first husband was Jacques Paris. Shortly after she married him, he went missing.
Right.
So there's 2 stories to this as well. Probably 3, probably 10. I don't know.
And a lot more made up.
Yeah, and a lot that's made up. So he did go missing. He was missing for about a year, but the rumor is shortly after he went missing, she had already considered herself and started calling herself the Widow Paris. His body, some say was found, some say wasn't found. So like I said, it just depends on who you talk to, what you read, but it is a fact that her husband, shortly after they were married, just vanished.
Right.
Basically. So after that, she then, once again, it goes into the interracial marriages. It wasn't allowed. Her second quote-unquote husband, who she was with for 34 years, was Christophe Dominic Duminy de Glapion. I'm sorry if I mispronounce things. I am not a French speaker.
Not a French
by
speaker.
any means. He was born in 1794. He was a white nobleman from France. Together they had, here we go again, between 5 and 7 kids. Some books and some things state that they only had 5, and some state that they had 7.
Right.
Only 2 out of their 5 children survived to adulthood, and only one of them was alive at the time of Marie Laveau's death. One of them was Marie Heloise Glapion, and then there was Marie Laveau II, who ended up being her successor. Let me see. I'm sorry, there's just so much information. I have a huge booklet that I've written everything down in, so you guys have got to give me a little bit. So they did have at least 5 children together. When he died, he actually left a huge debt on Marie Laveau to where she lost her childhood home. It did go up for auction, but a very wealthy benefactor bought the house and gave it right back to her and her children.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
That's another point that people also thought that she was part of voodoo. They felt as though she somehow put a spell on this benefactor.
Because someone can't just be nice.
Right. That's completely unheard of, apparently. You're not allowed to just be nice to be nice for nice sake. But yeah, he immediately, as soon as he bought the house, turned it right back around and gave it back to her, which was amazing. So she was able to live out the rest of her life in her home that her mother was born in, which that doesn't even happen anymore in this day and age.
Somebody basically being left a widow in debt, and then somebody comes along and says, here, let me help you with that. I'll take this off your hands, get you free of your debt, but then I'll go ahead and give it all back to you so it's over and done with, and you can live your life.
So I feel as though the things that she did in her life is what made that benefactor give it back to her.
Right.
When it comes to work, there are certain documents that say that she was a hairdresser. And then there's some that say that she was a nurse. I feel as though both of those kind of go hand in hand, just kind of like the origination of barbers. You know, at the time, back then, barbers were not only there to cut your hair, they were your doctors. They pulled your teeth. They did everything, and I feel as though
they bled you when you were sick.
Exactly.
I mean, it was a totally different sort of aspect of what we consider medicine nowadays. Back then, it was a barber.
Right.
That's where the red and white striped pole comes from.
Exactly. When you look at the story of her being a hairdresser, it said that she gained her influence based on her clients. So, you know, the slaves of the time would come to her for their hair, and they would tell her secrets about their masters and things like that. So she would have the upper hand, but she also supposedly took care of the rich and well-to-do. They wanted to sit with her as well.
So there was a respect there that over the years has been kind of overlooked for them to, how do I say it nicely, for them to basically lower themselves to someone that they would have considered lower than themselves.
Right, even though she at the time was very well-to-do.
Right.
Herself. She, from the way that it seems, aside from her husband who did spend all of their money in seedy type situations, I'm assuming, she was just as good as everyone else, whether they liked it or not. But with that, the hairstylist, the hairdresser thing, there's not a lot of information on whether that's fact or fiction. A lot of movies and things cover it as though she was a hairstylist.
Right. They do focus on that, yeah.
Right. But the one thing that I can say for sure is her work in the medical field. Whether you could call her a nurse or not, back then you didn't go to school for 10 years or, however long to become something. She was asked by New Orleans anytime that there was a yellow fever outbreak or a cholera outbreak, they would ask her to come help because she was unbelievably intelligent and she had mass amounts of knowledge about herbal medicine. And a lot of times that herbal medicine is what helped save those people.
She put herself in harm's way.
Absolutely. She put herself in harm's way. And she lost, I think it was 2 or 3 sons to yellow fever.
Wow.
So not only was she there to help the sick and the dying, but she also had to watch her children die from yellow fever as well. But it still never stopped her. Anytime that there was an outbreak, they always came to her, they asked her for help, and she always responded without hesitation.
Right.
By today's standards, with what she did for New Orleans, she would be considered a humanitarian.
Oh, yes, most definitely. And people kind of have to understand, I know yellow fever is not really something we really even talk about so much nowadays. It's kind of something that's not so much of an issue in our society now with our medical advances and stuff. But back then, yellow fever in America could be somewhat considered akin to the plague in Europe because it happened multiple times through lots and lots of cities, killing vast amounts of people.
Right.
And it was spread just unbelievably. We don't even know sometimes how it happened. It went on from the 1600s all the way up through the 1800s, over and over and over again especially in these southern states in the U.S.
Right. We didn't have drainage systems. The necessities that we feel are important today were not around back then, so a lot of disease just lingered.
Right, and even like some of the ones here, like with the ones here in Florida, like in 1821 with the yellow fever outbreak, they're not really even sure, but they think that it could have been barrels of water that was infected with yellow fever from the mosquitoes that were on the ships when they were coming here from Cuba.
Right.
That killed, a large percentage of the population just coming in contact with the people that were bringing these supplies in.
And that's the other part is Algiers area was where the slave trade, when they were bringing slaves to the South and to Louisiana, that is where they stepped foot. So it was right in Marie Laveau's backyard. So when anyone got off of a ship and they were sick, they brought that disease to New Orleans immediately.
If you've never been to some of these places in the South, Florida, Mississippi, Louisiana, all these areas, there is lots of swamp, and our state birds are the mosquitoes.
Absolutely.
It just festers with things like that.
So with her being a nurse and having all of the herbal knowledge that she did, that's how a lot of the old rich white ladies would get pissy. And even when she would save their lives, they would turn around and talk about how she used black magic or voodoo to heal these people. When it was just it was just her knowledge of how herbs and to mix herbs and what they did for the body and things like that. So she was ahead of her time.
Yeah, and that seems kind of like a theme back then with like, especially like, the older ladies that you kind of, I guess you could say like the myths that we have of like the crone witch is the old lady who,
Right.
She works with herbs and stuff, and she'll help people and save them, but then they basically would turn around and accuse her of witchcraft.
Exactly. And that is pretty much what happened to Marie Laveau. We are not saying that she did not practice voodoo. I'm not saying that. I don't have enough information for this episode to go into that. I will in the future. But like I said, I just wanted to kind of cover her positive points. But like I was saying, anytime that there was an outbreak, she was there. She went into the jails and she would sit and care for the sick and the dying in the jails. She was never paid for any of this. She gave her time and her love to the people of New Orleans, no matter what their race was, no matter what their religion was, no matter if they loved her or if they hated her. She gave herself unconditionally to care for the people of New Orleans. And honestly, if it had not been for her, a lot of New Orleans would have been wiped out during these epidemics.
Right. Yeah, she like we were saying, she literally put her life aside for the betterment of others, for the safety and the health of other people. She did not consider herself at all in this.
I mean, you can't. I mean, going into a situation where you know that you could get sick and you know you could die, but you just don't care. Your first thought is for others. To me, I don't care what you do. You are not a bad person if you are willing to put yourself forth like that.
Right.
And especially with obviously very little to no thanks from a lot of people. She had a large group of people that did follow her and loved her dearly. When she died, it was very apparent, especially in the obituary, how much that she was loved in New Orleans. But a couple bad eggs can start a rumor, and a rumor mill goes forever.
Yep.
So,
I mean, we're look at us, we're
look,
how many years later, and it's just
yeah. I mean, but we as people obviously have just had a huge thing with gossip. I mean, I don't, but most people love TMZ and the Kardashians and all of that stuff. And I feel like that's something.
It's always been there.
Yeah, unfortunately it has. And whether you're good or not, especially if you're doing good things, my God, it seems like it's easier for some people to make up bad things about good people.
Oh, yes.
And people try to make horrible people wonderful people.
Yep.
So so where the children thing comes into too, getting back to that, depending on where you look, you will see she had anywhere from 5 to 15 children. So to me, that blew my mind. But as I started digging a little bit deeper into things, I found out that she actually had 10 children that she did care for.
Right.
They were not her own. They were of all different races, different ages. But she took them into her home and cared for them to the best of her ability.
Like they were her own. So
right.
In a sense, even though they may not have been blood, they were her kids.
Right.
She gave them a life. She took care of them.
Absolutely. And that home on St. Anne's was open to everyone. It didn't matter if it was night or day. If someone came and needed food or needed a place to stay, she always had her doors open.
Right.
So once again, amazing humanitarian. Like I said, there's so much information.
There is so much to cover. We're literally trying to take a historic figure, and we're trying to, from our modern understanding and information of all the myths and the legends and just the outright lies about someone, and try to sift through them as if we were there with them at the time, and just try to figure it out piecemeal, because we're trying to do her honor, and it's not something that's easy with somebody who has had so many years of stories, both good and bad, related to her, to find like the true history, especially, you know, in that, like I said, that society, the way it was run, and how sort of history is written by the people who want it to be seen one way or another, sort of in a way of speaking, I guess you could say.
Right.
So it's been skewed quite a bit, and so just bear with us.
Right. Yeah. The one thing, like, with rumors and myths and legends, the one that I actually find not necessarily the hardest to believe, but she supposedly was allowed to actually do voodoo rituals inside the Catholic Church.
Right, in the St. Louis Cathedral, right?
I believe so, which blows my mind that she had the power and the sway to be able to do something like that. There were rumors that she was able to get people off of murder charges.
Yeah.
That was a big one. But I think a lot of it has to do with her influence of what she did for the community, to be able to speak for certain people. She did get a lot of people out of jail, but she also sat with a lot of people trying to turn them to God, because she was a devout Roman Catholic.
Right. She was baptized and raised within the Catholic Church.
Right. So I think that I hesitate to call it missionary work, because I don't want to call it that.
Because that would be going out to people
Correct.
and turning them to your religion.
Right. But she did sit in the jail cells. She did try to get people to see God and come to God, and basically she didn't absolve anybody of any sins, because obviously she was not, a priest.
Right.
But she did help.
She helped
people become better.
Right. She helped them find their own path.
Right.
And find peace in order to come to that path that would be positive for their life.
Right. And in doing
a spiritual counselor,
right,
sort of.
And in doing so, she was able to actually get quite a few people released from prison, which back then, if you went in, you were in.
Yeah, because especially back then, it wasn't all the niceties it is now. If you were in prison, if you were going to be executed, it was not by any means a pleasant affair.
No, you weren't trying to get on death row like some people do today,
right,
because they get special privileges and things like that.
Yep.
Death row, there was no row.
Yeah.
It was within a few days and you were gone.
It was a torturous public affair, and it stayed in the minds of everyone witnessing it.
Right. One thing that I keep saying, the 5 millionth thing.
Another thing
that I did find was that Congo Square in New Orleans was actually, when I say given to Marie Laveau, I don't mean like they handed it over. They gave her
a place to use,
a place to practice, and a place for both freed and enslaved people to come and practice, or to celebrate, or to be together, to actually be able to spend time with their families and things like that, which
was practically unheard of at that period of time.
It was amazing that she had the ability and the power to actually give her community the chance to be a community.
Right.
I think that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, then that's one of the sort of legends associated with her, that she actually did her practices out in the open, and
Right.
and it was a community building thing. And if you went to any other city and saw people doing something like that at that time, they probably would not have survived it.
No. There's no way.
Yeah.
And especially being enslaved, you weren't given anything.
Right.
So for her to have gained access, not just for herself or a few people, but for all of them,
Right.
was amazing.
And that's still a place that is highly revered within New Orleans, stemming from her life. Like, you can go to Congo Square to this day in New Orleans, and that the history that sits there, you can feel it just as you step into it. Even if you're not a practitioner, even if you're not a believer in the same sort of things that she did, that sort of religious aspect of it, I mean, you can go into it and you can feel the immense presence of everything that happened there, you
Right.
know, and in a very positive way.
Right.
And I can't stress that enough. I really can't. Like, voodoo in any of its aspects like that, New Orleans voodoo that surrounded Marie Laveau, legend or not, I mean, it is a beautiful religious practice that is an ancient one. You know,
Right.
it predates anything that we can really imagine as far as the way we look at quote unquote religion nowadays. So,
And I think that's kind of a big deal with most religions. I think that a lot of people are just scared of what they don't know
right.
or what they don't understand. And if you take a little bit of time and you actually look into these religions or meet people of different religions, there's always a common ground.
Yes.
You know, nothing is as negative as you think that it is.
Right.
I mean, from Satanism to Catholicism, you know, I feel as though there can be a common ground if we would just take a second to actually, like, talk to each other.
Yep.
You know, everybody's first response is to want to punch each other in the face.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, you know, with the whole idea of, you know, organized religions pointing to something and saying it's evil, branding it evil. I think what we were watching the other day with Bloody Mary,
Yes.
you know, in New Orleans, and she was basically saying the church saw people having fun with something, or, you know, something that was outside the church, and the church instantly steps in and says, nope, that's evil.
Right.
You know?
Right.
That's it's kind of par for the course.
And I feel like, and I don't mean to go off of topic. I mean, it is and it isn't, but I feel like if your religion vehemently hates something, you should probably question it.
Yeah, if it's so inclusive that it's exclusive of everything outside of itself, then there's probably a reason why it's doing that, and it's probably not for the ultimate betterment of humanity. It's probably for its own control factor.
Right.
I mean, just look at the atrocities that have come from that, just from that aspect of it.
Right. Right.
So
I always try to find, like, fun, goofy stories, because I am an absolute goofball by nature. I am taking this one a lot more seriously than I normally do. But I did find a fun little tidbit about Marie Laveau that made me giggle, because I probably would have done it as well. So, being labeled the Voodoo Queen, which a lot of people considered her, and she either did or didn't. I'm almost positive she did. But anyway, she wasn't. Nobody tried to overtake her. Like, a lot of times before Marie Laveau, when it came to voodoo, there were, you know, 2 to 3 well-known voodoo queens in the area.
like a power play.
Right. And every once in a while someone gets pissy and tries to take over. But that didn't happen a whole lot with her. A lot of people respected her enough, and let's be honest, they were scared of her because of things that happened and fell into her lap because of her good doings or because of her practice in voodoo, however you want to take it. Except she did have one person try to overthrow her. And the woman's name was, I believe, Rosalie. So Rosalie came in and decided that she wanted to be the voodoo queen of New Orleans. So Rosalie had a giant wooden carving shipped over from Africa, and it was ornately carved and had beads all over it. And she had it placed right in her own front yard. So everyone knew who she was, and what she was trying to do.
Right.
So once Marie Laveau heard that people were actually starting to fear this woman and to respect this woman, she stole the damn thing out of the woman's yard.
Good for her.
I thought that was fantastic. The woman, Rosalie, actually took Marie to court over it and lost her own case. And so it's kind of like, when parents deal with two children bickering over one thing.
Yeah.
Instead of, them going, Rosalie can't have it, we're giving it to Marie Laveau. They just took it away entirely.
Yeah. Neither one of you are getting it.
Exactly.
It's kind of like the biblical story of Solomon when somebody came up with the baby and claimed it was their kid, and the other person came up and claimed it was their kid, and King Solomon said, all right, well, we'll just cut the kid in two and you can both have a piece. And they stopped fighting about it right then.
Exactly. So. Well, in this case, they just went, no, we're just going to get rid of it entirely. And Marie Laveau kept her position as voodoo queen until the day she died.
Uncontested,
which was really rare. I mean, it really was.
Yeah, just the fact alone that, like you said, she was a freed woman, and
right.
They went to court over this, and the person accusing her, or the plaintiff,
right,
so to speak, in modern parlance, court talk. Because I'm a lawyer, not really. I'm not really a lawyer. I'm not licensed to practice in Florida or any other state.
Just on TV.
I may play a lawyer in my mind, but yeah, just the fact that she was allowed to even have that case, and the court was just like, no, you're not messing with this lady. You're nothing.
Right. So I was reading over her obituary that was sent to me, and I have never I've never read a more beautifully written obituary. It went into everything that we've talked about, but the major thing was, even on her deathbed, people were coming in, they were, kissing her forehead, what was left of her family, I should say, was with her until the end. They stayed by her bedside. And in the obituary, it says when she died, she still had a smile on her face.
Wow.
And from the way that it sounds, she had a huge funeral procession.
Because she had so many people that just really loved and respected her.
Right. And it was from all walks of life. Again, that's kind of a big thing with her, because it was so rare to have so many different types of people show love and admiration towards someone who was different from them.
Exactly.
And that to me speaks volumes.
Our society could take a big lesson from that.
Right. But as years passed and these legends and these stories of her became bigger and crazier, her remaining ancestry tried to shy away from her.
Right.
Which was sad, because unfortunately sometimes lies are stronger than truth, and they were almost ashamed
Yep.
to have said that.
It was very similar with the Native Americans.
Right.
How they hid, their ancestry or who they were, just so they were allowed to own land and to live amongst everybody else. So they weren't basically being, the lowest form of society, so to speak.
Right. And she wasn't. And
Right.
that's why
It's shocking.
yeah, because she didn't come from the lowest of the low.
Right. And she lived.
Holy crap.
Like, in that era, for someone to have lived as long as she lived is almost unheard of.
So there, depending on when she was born, like I said, it's so hard without documentation. There are some documents that say that she lived into her 80s. The obituary that I have said she lived to be 98, which
Even nowadays.
I think in like the 1800s, like what, 40, 50 was like the max, really?
That was pretty much, you were considered, old once you started getting into your 40s.
Yeah. Yeah. So for her to have lived as long as she did, in the obituary, it does say, like, towards the end of her life, her memories did fade and things like that, but she was still jovial. She was still happy. She still told stories.
Yeah, and I mean, that's natural with anybody. Old age, you will start, not necessarily Alzheimer's, that's not necessarily an old age sickness, but just the fact of memory.
I don't remember what I ate yesterday.
Yeah.
Like, no, I can't even imagine living to 98, and my brain will forget to breathe at that point.
I don't know if I want to live to 98.
I don't either. There's just no way. I'd rather come back and haunt the crap out of everybody. That's my goal in life. Once again, I can't tell y'all how excited I am to actually end up haunting the crap out of y'all.
That is a common theme in your life. You can't wait to die and haunt people.
Yeah. I'm going to have a lot of fun. It's going to be a good time. When in doubt, spread them out. All right. So, if you guys get a chance to get a hold of the obituary, I highly recommend it. I am not personally going to share it because it is not for me to share. If I get permission to do so, I will gladly put it up on our Instagram for you guys to see. But like I said, I've never seen such a beautifully written obituary. But here's the but.
It's always a but.
It depends on which obituary you decide you want to read.
Right.
Because there's two.
Of course.
Yeah. So the one that was beautifully written is the one that I would go with because it goes into much more detail about her life than the other piece of crap one that literally makes me want to throat punch people.
Yeah.
It was written by the Democratic Party newspaper at the time, and it talked about basically what a horrible human she was. It negated everything that the other obituary said. I started to read it, and I got so mad I couldn't finish it.
Yeah.
So...
Because it has to be politicized.
Right, exactly. And that's what it was. It was a political power play at the time. And they wanted to basically scare people away from revering her. I mean, a lot of people called her a saint because of the things that she did.
People still call her Mama.
Absolutely. And she deserves it. She was a caretaker.
Yep.
So
she was a saint unlike any other actual saint, so to speak.
Right.
Like what the characteristics should be for a saint.
Absolutely. Let me see if I can get a little snippet of the obituary of something that I haven't covered. Please hold. Elevator music. No, I pretty much, without word for word talking, like reading you guys the obituary, I pretty much covered what the obituary covered, because I felt like it was important to make people aware of the good deeds that she did.
And that's what an obituary should be.
Right.
It should be a celebration of someone's life.
I don't know.
Really...
I've seen some obituaries that, like, ooh, you knew that family hated that person.
Yeah, we won't get into, and some recent ones that we know of personally.
Yeah.
We won't get into.
Ooh, yeah. Actually, I'll say it.
Okay, yeah. So that's your place to say.
I got
it,
no problem saying it. The person that my Nana was married to recently passed. They had since divorced before he passed away. But man, he tore everybody in the family a new one except for like me and my sister. It was amazing. It was hilarious. So it wasn't against him.
Right.
He had one ready for our family.
Yeah, even wasn't misspelling people's names to make.
Well, yeah, my cousin who was a male, was called a female's name in it. So yeah, that is what an obituary can be. That is not what they should be. Obituary should be what was written, and the positive one that was written was actually circulated a lot more than the Democratic one.
Good. Because that was her obituary. It was not a politicized trash piece.
And the head of the Catholic Church at the time, Minot, I believe his name was, Father Minot, he actually held her service. Yeah. So to me, if someone was that horrible of a person, the head of the Catholic Church would not have held her service.
Right.
Under any circumstances. So it's one of those, I lean more towards the positive of her and the light that she shed upon people. Because
that, honestly, I would think, from my own perspective, that was her.
Right.
You know, that really was her. Everybody historically like that has any sort of that negative slant is a biased sort of thing that has happened over the years.
Fake news,
yes.
So with this one, it is, I guess we're going to kind of end this portion of it just because there is a lot. I will get into the voodoo side of it on a later part, but my big thing, and I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but I was super nervous about doing this one because I just think she's such an amazing person.
Right.
And so you can ask Eric. This whole week I've been like, I don't know if we should do this. I'm super scared to do this because I don't want to offend anybody, but I also want to make sure that everything that is said is in a positive light because she deserves as much positivity as you can give someone.
Right. This was our way of really sort of honoring her memory.
Right.
More than anything else.
And that's kind of the big thing. I was actually asked to do a Marie Laveau episode. And so I did, but doing this episode means more to me than just an episode.
Right.
So when I was asked to do it,
this is something that touches you in a very personal way.
Yeah. And I'm having a very hard time not crying doing this episode.
And if you've heard any of our previous podcasts, you can tell.
Yeah, I'm totally...
Just by her voice that she is having a difficult time with this.
Right.
And it really is. It's just our way of honoring the memory of the life of a wonderful, beautiful woman, you know, in so many different ways. She gave more to her community than people can even fathom being given to a community nowadays.
And
she really did.
I feel as though movies and TV shows, while the only thing that I will say about American Horror Story is they picked the most beautiful black woman they possibly could have to play Marie Laveau, Angela Bassett, because it is said by so many just how unbelievably gorgeous this woman
Right.
was.
She was a beautiful woman, inside and out. Like,
Yes.
her soul and her
insides
everything.
reflected on the outside,
Exactly.
basically. I mean, and you can see pictures of her, or portraits or paintings of her, and she was just amazingly gorgeous. Like,
Yes.
I cannot express to me,
Right.
And
No,
I mean,
I
obviously,
agree.
into a lot of people,
She radiated that beauty, not just
Absolutely.
in a physical sense, but in a spiritual sense, and it all came together in a perfect symbiotic way. That's who she was. She glowed with that energy.
and the relative of her that I got this information from, and I hope that she does not mind me saying this, is unbelievably beautiful as well.
Yes.
I mean, and you can see the brow bone, you can see the eyes, you can see it in her nose. She is just as gorgeous as Marie Laveau, in my opinion. Yeah. So that beauty has translated, and from talking to her as well, you feel that light and that beauty inside of her as well. I feel as though that people like that, it's almost genetic.
It
like that spirit,
generations.
that spirit comes forth and it comes through, and it's remarkable looking at Marie's picture and the great granddaughter, obviously, or great great granddaughter.
And just the fact, too, that because of the way it's been treated throughout the years, both within the family and within society, that she's bringing that forward in a way of reverence and not a way of, like, shunning away from it.
Right.
That respect and that love is still there for somebody she never met.
Right. And I think that the fact that I was given this information is because when she commented on the fact that I was doing a podcast on Marie, she was like, I hope you do her justice. And so when I wrote her and I started talking to her about, there's nothing negative that will be said about her.
Right.
I mean, because that's not...
I don't really find anything negative that could be. That's a personal opinion.
Right.
The negativity comes from a biased personal perspective.
Right. But I feel as though that kind of set her at ease and let her know that we weren't the type of people that were going to sit here and
feed into all of those
to the negative.
stereotypes.
Like I said, once again, eventually I will get back and we will do a part 2, and I will go into the voodoo side of Marie Laveau.
As we understand it, obviously.
But I don't want to misstep, and I don't want to say something that is incorrect or negative in any light. So that's why we're kind of stopping it with her life as I could find before overstepping my bounds.
Right. I think that's perfectly acceptable way to explain it. Because, right. I mean, like I said in the beginning, we are not in any way initiated into any form of voodoo religion. We do not claim to be practitioners. Personally, with me, I do consider myself more of a practitioner of folk magic, which here in the South, a lot of people refer to as hoodoo, but that doesn't go into the aspects of the actual religion of voodoo or any of those sort of branches. It's just we respect those sort of things, and we ask assistance and stuff.
Right.
But, this is just our outside looking in understanding of it, and what we feel is a connection to honor this great woman more than anything else. Right.
So before we end everything, for those of you who, listen to us for our paranormal stuff, and hopefully have made it all the way through this episode, because it is not paranormal. It is an honoring of a person. I have 2 different places for you guys that are open investigations that are available still. I've actually been in contact with a new group. It is Paranormal Research South Florida. They're based out of Miami. They do have 2 investigations coming up at Deering Estate. One is September 29th, and the other one is October 20th.
2018.
Yes.
Because you may be listening to this 5 years from now.
Oh,
so.
totally my bad.
Yes.
My bad. 2018. Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So, they do still have tickets available. I have the number available. They also do have an Instagram. If you don't have a pen and paper and write this number down, but the number to get a hold of them is area code 305-235-1668, extension 233. Like I said, they do have tickets still available for September 29th and October 20th, 2018 at Deering Estate. The other one coming up is we will be doing the Moon River investigation with Savannah Research Society.
Right. That's Moon River Brewing in Savannah.
Yes. And that's going to be October 14th, 2018. There are still some tickets available.
Right. It is very limited because we keep that very small so as not to have too many people in that building and too much interference when we're doing the investigations as far as contamination between the floors.
Right. So if you guys are interested in hanging out with us 2 dorks and doing an investigation, you guys can actually go see me run upstairs and get super excited.
Guys, the REM pod's going off.
Yeah, I get ridiculously excited when I get into an investigation.
And let me just jump in there really quick, too. What is unique about Savannah Ghost Research Society doing the investigation at Moon River Brewing in Savannah, Georgia, is that there are a couple of floors that are abandoned in that building, basically inaccessible to the public completely. A waiver has to be signed for us to even get in there to do this, and just because of the legality and the safety issues with it, and it's one of the only groups that has really full access to that building. The abandoned, closed off upper floors, basement, the main floor where the actual restaurant bar is, and everything. So it is complete access to that building, which is fairly unprecedented within Moon River.
Yeah, I think the last time we went, I don't even think I spent any time on the main floor. I was literally running all over the place in every other area that we weren't, that you're not normally allowed to be in.
All the way upstairs with those crazy floors and down in the basement, which we got an awesome apparition down in the basement on video. That's I think we have it on Westgate. I know I have it on my YouTube. On Facebook?
It's on our Facebook, yeah. But yeah, so if you guys want to come hang out with us, we will definitely be at Moon River Brewery in Savannah, Georgia, October 14th, 2018. For tickets, you guys can call area code 912-398-7820 to book your tickets. I think we only have 9 or 10 tickets left.
I'm not really sure.
With a total of 15
Yeah, it's
tickets.
a total of 15 total. And what was it? It's in afterlifetours.net. Also, you can go through and find contact info as far as the business number through afterlifetours.net.
Right, and I do have the business number also on our Instagram on Westgate Paranormal on one of the pictures of me investigating down there in the basement.
Yes.
So if, once again, you guys don't have pen and paper, check our Instagram, Westgate Paranormal. I do have the number up on there, or you can message us. I'll give you guys all the information that you want. So that's Paranormal Research South Florida. They're doing Deering Estate September 29th and October 20th, 2018. The number again is 305-235-1668, extension 233. And then we have an investigation that we personally will be at Moon River Brewery. But yeah, other than that, come check us out on our Instagram. I am active on there almost 24/7.
All the time, yes.
Like, y'all can write me at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I will probably answer. You can write me at Well, probably not 8 o'clock in the morning.
Probably not. Because you were up till 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, let's be honest.
Let's say between 11 a.m. and 3 a.m. is a decent amount.
I'd even
window.
go 10 to 3.
10 to 3. Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I'm awake from 10 a.m. to 3 a.m.
And also, just in addition, just speaking about that with the Savannah Ghost Research Society, we are opening Afterlife tours.
Yes.
Been going on for about 8 years now in Savannah. It is going to be opening the first Wednesday of October, which is October the 3rd in St. Augustine, Florida. So here in a few short days, if you go onto afterlifetours.net, you can see availability, and you can also start booking the tours beginning in October that yours truly, me, Eric, will be leading down there through St. Augustine. Right now we have it set up that we'll be doing 2 tours a night, first tour at 8 p.m., and the next one we're looking at around 10:15, maybe 10:30, depending on how it is, but tentatively 8 p.m., 10:15 p.m. It's going to be about an hour and a half walking tour through St. Augustine, and it's unlike any other tour St. Augustine offers in any way, because not only will I take you on a walking tour through St. Augustine, but I will show you actual evidence at every spot that we go to that we have personally caught, whether it be video or pictures, as well as the history and the stories behind the haunted places on the tour that we've caught in our own investigations with the Savannah Paranormal Research Society as part of those investigations. So no other tour in St. Augustine is like that. I can tell you firsthand, because having done tours in St. Augustine myself for some time now, there's a lot of other tour groups that are completely theatrical, some of them that are just completely historical. This one is the only tour of its kind in St. Augustine. We are limited to 30 people in a walking tour in St. Augustine, so it's 30 people or less. The tour prices right now are set at $25 a person, and it is an awesome place to just walk around, hear some of the history, and see some of the very first-hand evidence that we have captured from our personal investigations at each spot we take you to. So check it out. Afterlifetours.net. Savannah, Georgia has one, and then now, starting in October of 2018, we will be also doing it in St. Augustine, Florida.
Yay!
Yay! I am super excited about this.
I know you are.
If you have not figured that out yet already, so.
You've had to change your underwear a few times from pooping in them because you're so excited.
Now I just stopped wearing underwear, and I don't wear khakis, so I don't have to worry about it.
Yep. Yep. Alabama wet wipe.
So I think I think that covers everything we were looking at.
Yeah.
A really good yet heartfelt, somewhat difficult at times.
Absolutely.
Honoring a memorial of the wonderful life of Marie Laveau. More should be forthcoming. We'll probably be doing more parts of this. Stay tuned for further podcasts. I'm looking into doing one by request here soon on the Mothman.
Yes.
And whatever else we kind of decide we want to do and other people request us to do some research on. You can find us anywhere online, through Facebook, through Instagram, on Spreaker, which is who hosts our podcasts initially, at Westgate Paranormal. You can also email us at westgateparanormal@gmail.com. And we really look forward to more interaction with you. You can find our podcast on just about every platform at this point. We've recently gone live with iHeartRadio. Yay! Finally! It's a big process to even be submitted and approved with iHeartRadio, so that's a good thing. So iHeartRadio, Google Play, iTunes, podcasts, YouTube. This will go through over to my personal YouTube channel, which is my username is Wedgelock, WDJLOK, or you can just look me up, Eric Desaad, which you can find everything through Facebook and stuff. So
I don't have any of that fun stuff.
You have all that fun.
Hey, I mess around with you guys on Instagram on our Westgate, and then if you just want to see my childish behavior on my own personal Instagram, it's Amanda Munchkin.
Well, the only thing it kind of comes over is my personal YouTube, and that's just how Spreaker does it, because that's their
I know, but
distribution.
I wanted to sound cool too, but I'm
cool.
just not that cool. I'm just a big kid.
And that's how it should be.
Right.
So, from us here at Westgate Paranormal, we thank you for listening, and we really thank you for helping to spread our podcast, sharing it with your friends, and sharing the links. And we really just we try to have a good time with this. We try not to get so overly technical and so full of what we were saying to hear ourselves talk. We like this to be fun. We like it to be fun to be listened to.
And if anybody is a paranormal investigation team that has open investigations where you guys sell tickets for people to come, get a hold of me, because I love being able to share other groups' investigations. Because, it's not just a local thing. Like, I want to share U.S. wide. So if you guys are an investigation team, come talk to me. Like, hit me up, and I have zero problem plugging your next events at all. I love doing it. I feel like we should be spreading the love. So
I totally agree. Yeah, we will give you all. It's basically it's free advertising. If you want us to let people know about your event and your investigation, if you're hosting something, feel free to let us know, on Facebook, email us, whatever, and we'll spread the word. Our listeners are growing day by day, our listener bases and stuff. I watch the stats and we're being heard all over the world at this point. So,
and I love being weird with people. So, if you message me, just fair warning, I am a little I can get a little kooky.
And that's the fun of it.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, guys. We really appreciate y'all.
Until next time, y'all be safe out there, and thanks for listening. Take care.